All right, what's good, everybody? I'm Steve Discourse.
This your girl, Jay Callie.
The show is What's the Deal? You know what it is. You tuned in. We're going to give you a rundown of news and events that have happened in the past week around the country. And so you know what to do, so we know what to do, so we're good going forward. So what are we going to talk about today? We got a long list. We got Kaepernick and Nike. We got Brett Kavanaugh. We got the mass shooting up in Maryland. We got the white woman who runs HipHop. We got sub sandwiches. We got police run amok. Where do you want to start?
Let's go ahead and start with the white woman running the hip hop. That sounds
okay. All right. Did you know, dear listeners out there, that it is in fact a white woman that runs hip hop? Is
Not
that surprise
all of
to
hip hop.
you?
That sounds. You're making it sound like she's running all of hip hop in the world.
That's how you hook them in, though. You go, whoa, wait, what? You got to get them with the scandalous headline.
It is true.
Right?
A white woman discovered hip hop and is in control of it.
So, we're talking actually specifically about at the National Museum of African American Culture and History, the Smithsonian, the Black Smithsonian, as they call it.
You can call it that, okay. I'll allow it.
I mean, that's just what I've seen, that's what I've heard.
What's going on over there?
So there was a little bit of like kerfuffle, right? Little scandal, feathers getting ruffled on social media when it kind of came out to some prominent hip-hop heads that the woman running the hip-hop exhibit at the Smithsonian is white.
Wow.
And a white woman, I guess the people who got mad about it didn't know who was running it. And so they were surprised and dismayed that it was a white woman at the African American History and Culture Museum.
I'm trying not to judge because it's like, I can get why someone would be shocked to be like, what? But are you telling me that people are angry?
Some people are.
Why? What is, just because she's white?
I mean, I think it's maybe it's just if nothing else, optics. Because I mean, a lot of people have defended her too, saying that like her credentials are legit. She's been in this game a long time. She's been a hip hop historian and archivist like for a while, so she knows her stuff. So she didn't come out of the blue, from like a bluegrass radio station
Right.
and then be like, well, I need a job. So it wasn't necessarily like that, but I think it is an interesting question, more so than just being kind of like juicy, gossipy. That like, is it legitimate? Is that valid?
Why isn't it? So, okay, I'm gonna give you my perspective on it. I said this a while ago when I first heard the story, and I was like, for some reason, it just feels personal. But I got to move past that and look at it from a news perspective. Like, I don't think it's anything wrong necessarily that a white woman is running the hip hop exhibit at the Black Smithsonian. I think it's, for black people, we like to be like, oh, we doing it for the culture. Like, we hire black people just because. We eat black restaurants just because. We shop in black-owned businesses just because. It's like, we need to support each other. We need to hold each other down. So white people have plenty of advantages and opportunities over us at everything, like, in the United States of America. I won't say in the world because I think that's a common misconception. But in America, I can say, surely. So when white people get jobs that are rooted in black culture, that are exposing our experiences, or that are, even though she does have the credentials, there has to be someone else out there who has the credentials as well. I'm not knocking her, saying she doesn't deserve the job. She worked hard for it, and frankly, like, I think the exhibit looks really, really good. That's why I can't be mad, because the exhibit is so cool. But I get why people are like, really, another freaking person just stepping on our toes. I get it from both perspectives, and I don't know where I personally stand yet, but I have my eyes open.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's maybe the most valid point, that it's not necessarily that she's not qualified to do it, but the idea that there has to probably be someone else, a person of color, that's equally qualified for it, and maybe they should have got that preference. And like for me, I'm wondering what I would do. Like if I was in a similar situation, would I turn that down? Like that's a job of a lifetime. You get to be the curator running an exhibit at a Smithsonian.
Right.
For any historian or whatever, that would be a huge deal. And so would I turn that down in favor of just how it looks, right? To be like, yeah, but, and I don't know, because there's something to be said, like how much of that job is about representing the information as much as presenting the information.
But wait, who was saying that she represented? Is that what I said?
No, that's just my words.
Okay,
so
got it.
so to
Yeah,
me,
she's definitely
I think you
presenting it.
are presenting it, and I guess there's nothing wrong with that necessarily. But I think some people maybe are taking it a little bit more to heart because of the museum it's in. Like if it was in maybe just the regular American history museum, and it was a hip hop exhibit, then okay, you're just presenting. I think so. That's why I think it's a little bit more sensitive. Because people say, hold on, this is to represent my culture, my history, whatever, and you have this person who cannot represent it in the same way doing this.
I would even argue that it's more than that. I think it's because the Museum of African American History and Culture is something that Black people viewed as like, oh, this represents us, this is about us. But I think the thing that makes us hold it so close is because we feel like this is for us. Like
By
you
us?
did this, Steve. You did this for us. The Smithsonian is dedicating an entire museum to a history that people constantly try to make us feel like we do too much. Like, why don't y'all just let it go? It's old news. Like, everybody else is allowed to praise their history except for us. We didn't have a museum. So it's like we finally get a museum, and it's like history, and it's modern, and it's representative, and it's like Black people running it, owning it, doing the security, everything. And hip-hop, like music that we made, like our voice in this nation, to find out that like someone who's not only white but white and a woman is like in charge of it, it's just like, that's supposed to be for me. How you get in here? Who
Wait,
let
but
you
why
in?
and a woman is that extra?
I already told you that it's personal for me, and I don't want to have my biases all up on the mic, but it's just
Okay.
being white and being a white woman is like historically, it's for me as a Black woman, it's like they've done a lot. That's all I'm gonna say. Maybe another episode I'll get into I'll be more factual with it, but it's just like a white woman.
All right. Well, we'll leave the listeners to make of that what they will. But yeah, we've said enough. We can move on. What else do we got? Let's spin the wheel of topics. Wheel of topics. Where do you land? We got the police acting up. We've got Kaepernick. We got Kavanaugh. We got the mass shooting. You want to do that real quick?
Since we're talking, I don't want to say about white women because I'm actually not 100% sure if this woman is white.
Okay, so let's go with it.
Man, that's a judgment that I passed when I heard about a
What's her name?
a mass shooting, because most mass shootings are committed by white people.
Monopoly on that, yeah.
Yeah, right. So
We're
I
shutting
think
it
I just
down.
assumed it, and I'm going to Steve's going to fact check that, and I'm going to let y'all know because I don't want to be misinforming people out there. But there was a mass shooting in the past couple of days in Aberdeen, Maryland, and basically it's a woman, which is why this is making like top news, because women do not commit mass murders. Women, not never, but it's very, very rare. And the motive was kind of unclear to the people who were there. She's a temporary worker at a warehouse that's connected to a Rite Aid in Aberdeen. And she was a very disgruntled employee. And one day she decided to come in with a 9mm Glock and shoot the place up. She shot a grand total of 6 people, 3 of which died. 3 are still injured. She also killed herself by shooting herself in the head. So clearly, again, we've talked about mental health, we've talked about mass shootings, and once again we see these two things come together in like a terrible display of American citizenship, but like society, where people don't get the help that they need, and then they become very violent and aggressive, and they take it out on others, and ultimately, like she's done, out on themselves, because her avenues for expression, she didn't feel like there was any other way. And unfortunately, lives were lost. And another thing that I found very interesting about this story, people who work at the warehouse, their families have been trying to get in touch with them throughout the rest of that day. Like, they had the city shut down within like a mile of the warehouse, and the workers apparently are only allowed to use their cell phones when they go on break. So people were ringing them, calling them, blowing their phones up. They weren't hearing back. They didn't know if their relatives were safe, if they were alive, if they were in the hospital. And I just thought that was strange, and I hope that it's not because their managers were like, you still can't use your cell phone until your break time. That would be insane that something traumatic has just happened, something tragic has just happened, and I can't call my mama.
But if it's in a warehouse, their phones might be off in another room, hard to get like across the property, possibly. So
that could be
based on my
reason,
experience from working in a warehouse. But she was black, actually. Snoshia Mosley.
Whoa. When I read the name, I was thinking, like, this sounds like
Snoshia, I hope I'm pronouncing that right.
Of a black woman.
Yeah.
And then the people who worked there were black, according to some of the pictures I saw. So I was like, I don't know.
One of the victims was an immigrant from Nepal.
Sorry for the bias. White women, I'm sorry.
Yeah, come on. After you just got on
that's
them
a sincere
earlier,
apology.
Yeah.
That was my own biases popping through.
So, yeah, I mean, we've talked about this before, about the overlap of, like, mental health and well-being overall in society and how that factors into people getting reckless and shooting like that. And I don't know where else we can take that. It's a conversation we've had, and we don't have that over and over again. But it's really tragic. We record out of Silver Spring, Maryland, which is not far from where the shooting happened. So definitely condolences to everybody in the area that was affected and all that, because that's rough.
I have a question for you. Okay. This has been the biggest piece of this story that's kind of got people's heads spinning, people who advocate for gun control, people who advocate for gun rights. The woman, Snoshia, that's how you pronounce it? Snoshia? Yeah. I don't really know, but that's her name. She had a mental illness. She was diagnosed at the time that she went and purchased the handgun. And there are no restrictions on purchasing weapons when you have mental illnesses, even ones that people have been known to become violent when triggered. Do you think that that's strange? Do you think that's something that needs to be changed?
Yeah. I mean, I'm very, like, mixed about the whole debate about, like, abolishing the Second Amendment, sort of, is how it gets framed. But yeah, I think definitely there has to be a middle ground for sure. And I'm not a doctor or a mental health expert, right, or anything. So how to define that, I don't know. But yeah, to some extent, we've got to try and identify specific individuals who might be more susceptible to making rash decisions, dangerous, harmful decisions than others. It could be any of us at any time, right? Because, again, this is not only when people are crazy and they shoot. You got to be crazy in just a general sense to go shoot up a place. Right. But it's not always about someone with a mental health issue discreetly. But, yeah, I think we've got to figure out a smart way to have limitations in one way or another. And how far those limitations go, I don't know. That's a whole nother conversation. That's a whole episode that we could debate that. But we got to do something. I mean, I don't know.
I think at the very least we could pretend to care. Because right now I think that we don't care as a nation, not as individuals, as a nation about gun laws and gun security. And I don't even think that we pretend to care. Like, at the very least, if someone's diagnosed with a mental disability, I'm going to say, that has been prone to violence, do a risk assessment. At the least, even if you don't think it's going to be successful, to say, this is what we do to try to prevent these types of things from happening. But when you just straight up say, no, there are no restrictions on people
there hasn't been a lot of middle ground
who have been violent in
the
past or who have been known to be mental, even though our country is going through like an influx of mass shootings and loosey-goosey gun rights, what are we actually doing other than talking? It's just like, okay, now we're talking. What's up? That's how I feel about it. Like, do something. Even if it's 2%, 3% effective. You did it. You could say you tried. But yeah. That's where I stand on it. It's insane. Agreed. So, all right, let's go. What do we got? I know 2 stories I want to finish with. So you want to do Kaepernick or Kavanaugh now? Let's do Kavanaugh. We can end with Kaepernick because I just want to get we still got more stories than that. We got more? Oh, yeah. So right now, Kaepernick or Kavanaugh. So, all right, Kavanaugh, right? Brett Kavanaugh is a judge. He's right now trying to get appointed to the Supreme Court, if you don't know that already. This has been happening for a couple of weeks now. He was recently accused by a woman who knew him in high school of sexually assaulting her when she was 15 and he was 17 at a house party.
So that's the backdrop. If you don't know what's going on in this Supreme Court appointment scenario and this whole process, and it's obviously super scandalous. There's a lot of debate. What are we going to do, especially given the Me Too movement and the momentum that has and the awareness. And so basically what we have is predictable kind of two sides to this, right? People are coming to his defense and saying this is a good man, he's a good husband, he's a good father, he's a good judge, his career and professionalism is on point,
right?
And it's purely political, and the left wing, the Democrats are just trying to do this to hold up the nomination. On the other side, they're saying, some people aren't even stopping short of saying like this guy's career just needs to be over, but they definitely need to fully investigate this, look into it and everything, and this is potentially a disqualifying issue for him to be on the Supreme Court. And that all makes sense to me. And two things. One, if you're coming out to defend him that he's a good husband, good father, all that, okay, and it's not what we're talking about. Nobody came out and said, "Bro, this guy's not even a good dad, yo." No, like that's not the pertinent issue right now.
That's
like nobody raised that. Nobody said he ain't even a good father. I heard he doesn't take his wife out ever, or I don't know what like good husbands do, right? Like, because I'm divorced.
I think they're defending his Steve.
Well, moment of
the purpose of
honesty.
this is to defend his character, though. To say like he's a great man. He's a great dad. He's a great husband. How can a man with bad character be a good dad and a good husband? He's a moral man. He's a stand-up guy. I think that's why people jump straight to like defending how a person is with others.
Right, and that's all good, but at the same time, you can be a good person and have made a mistake.
That's true. That's very
you
true.
can be a good person and have reformed yourself from being a formerly shitty person, right? Especially at 17, plenty of us make mistakes and do stuff that we wouldn't by any means do when we're 30, 40, 50 years old, right? So that defense to me is really beside the point. It's like, okay, all you people know him and he's a good guy, but what about this mistake, right? What about that one time he messed up, if that's what it is, right? And that kind of to me is the root of it. It doesn't matter what he's doing now. The question at hand is, did he do this other thing? And here's something I heard that was really profound the other day. I was listening to The Daily, which is a podcast from New York Times. And they had a woman on there. Oh man, I'm blanking on her name. But she gave her testimony, her perspective on this, and framed it in a really interesting way, that if everything they're saying is true, he's fine, he's a good guy. If he did this back then, if he actually did it, right? Because at this time now it's still an allegation, and whether you believe her or him or not, the point is it's still an allegation. If he did it, he's had his entire life to come to terms with it, or to make amends with it, or to hold himself accountable in some way. And this woman who's saying this, in high school, she had a similar experience, and it was really traumatizing. She was suicidal for a while, and then like 5 or 6 years later, this guy appeared at her job or something and like broke it all down and was like apologized, and like it had been eating him up ever since he had done that.
Wow.
And just really put himself out there, laid it bare for her, and that was a lot of closure for her.
That's great.
And not to say that would be the reaction for everybody, and it depends on the actual interaction that happened in the first place, but hearing this woman's story was a super like strong testimony, and I think that's valid. So if it comes out that he really did this, what have you been doing the rest of your life that you don't have any regret, any concern, that you never wanted to hold yourself accountable? And if you never could face that truth, where's your character really at? That's a hard thing to do.
Yeah, like
but where's your character at? You could have come back and said that.
It's very particular because we assume that because he didn't go up to her and physically apologize, it means that he didn't have regrets or that he didn't feel ashamed. And we assume that he didn't like do any internal work. I'm not defending him. I'm just looking at it from the other perspective.
True.
Like he could have very well prayed for forgiveness and went and repented and like did a lot of internal work to like forgive himself. And a lot of times people aren't considerate enough, is the word I'll use, to go to the other person who was affected and admit, I was wrong, this is what I did. Or sometimes people aren't strong enough or don't have enough courage to stand up and face this person who they hurt and just say, I did this to you, I was wrong for it, I sincerely apologize, and I hope one day you can find the compassion to forgive me because I've chosen to forgive myself.
Yeah. Yeah, no, agreed. It's a hard thing to do. It's a hard thing to do even on a much more low pressure issue. But at the same time, this guy's applying for the highest job in the country.
Right, and I can understand
the
why she's
literal
hurt.
top of his profession. It doesn't get higher in the world. And I think it's all right to hold someone at that point, especially when that job has to do with the rest of us.
Right.
If you're a CEO or something else, and that's a little bit different maybe, but now you're going to make judgments that are going to affect all the rest of us. I think that's kind of fair. I think it's a valid thing to debate to have. And that, to me, is more the point. Like, there's a lot of debate and conversation about, oh, this and that and speculation. But to me, yeah, it just comes down to the fact that if it is verified that this really did happen, like, where's the accountability at? Right. And I know that, I mean, that's got to be probably hard to face it, like you said, especially something like that. If you really did it and then realize how wrong you were, that could be very difficult to face up to. But I think it would have to happen because you're the top guy. You want to be the most powerful person in your profession. I think it's fair. And second, let me add this before we finish this conversation. The other thing is, a lot on the right side, the Republicans are saying this is a delay tactic, like, we don't have time for this. They're just trying to slow it down, the process, this and that. I'm going to tell you right now, anybody who says that, you tell them they're full of shit.
That's because they are. You don't say that.
Because think about this. It's a lifetime appointment. What you in a hurry for? It's a lifetime appointment. Let's let the chips fall where they will.
Maybe he feels like
and settle this, right? Well, it is, and everything's urgent, right? And obviously, we know it's hurry because if the midterm elections happen and the Republicans lose the majorities, now everything is up on its head.
Exactly.
I get all that. But let's just step back at a pure logic. If anybody tries to say, no, this is just political maneuvering, okay, it is, sure, but there's no hurry. This is a lifetime appointment. We should take all the time we need. And it was a little political because the timing was a little political, although there were reasons why she didn't want to fully come out with it yet or anything. But, I mean, this was really good timing. And that's not being cynical.
I agree.
And that's not to take credit or validity away from what she's saying. But also, let's just admit, this is really good timing for the Democrats.
I think it was intentional.
Like, if they would have done this a month ago, are they going to drag this out for 2 months?
Right, no.
To wait for the nomination? No, so it was good timing. But I think all that stuff is really valid to say he had plenty of time to make amends, to come to terms and be accountable, and to be the morally upstanding person that everyone is coming to his defense to say he is. And there's no hurry to get anybody nominated because he's going to be up there for 20 years.
Dang, son.
20 years.
Politics.
So, all right. Moving along, let's talk about police going wild. Real quick, I got 2 stories. We're not going to get into it because we could have a weekly podcast where we just talk about police abusing their authority. So there's a traffic stop in Arizona earlier this week, and this is what we're going to do because we want to bring these stories to light every week, not go in depth, but just keep you abreast of what's going on, just to make sure we all know and we don't forget that yes, this happens and it's very common. It's uncommon at all the scenarios of police and civilian interaction, but it still is persistent nonetheless. So, Arizona traffic stop. Cop allegedly makes the traffic stop because the passenger seems suspicious, which I don't even understand how that's
the go-to.
A possible like he,
It's
like his arm was hanging out the window in a way that no regular person would. Like, what? How do you judge suspicious passenger, right? But okay, you're the trained professional, not me. So he pulls the woman over. He comes up to her. She's asking why she's being stopped. He demands she gets out of the car, and she's still asking, I don't understand. And she stands up out of the car, and after a little bit of back and forth on the words, he punches her in the face.
What?
Drags her to the ground and drags her 10 feet across the sidewalk or the street, right? And The woman's name was Renee Armenta, and again, this was in Arizona. So we're not going to get all into this debate about police brutality and violence and stuff like that. But that happened. If you want to look more into it, check that out. And again, the woman's name was Renee Armenta, and this was a traffic stop in Arizona. So another man in Texas named Lindo Jones was shot after police responded to a call where they thought someone was breaking into the car. He was in the vehicle. He was in the vehicle with the alarm on. It was his vehicle. He said, "This is my car." The officer demanded he get on the ground. He's like, "It's wet. It's raining out. Like, you want me to lay on the ground?" All this and that. Kind of struggled a little bit. The cop was a little bit forceful, as they are wont to do, right? And he resisted and struggled. Ended up getting up and walking backwards away and saying, "Don't shoot me, but why? Like, why are you doing that to me? Like, why are you harming me physically?" And so the cop shot him. He's alive. He was shot, I think, in the leg. He spent a couple days recovering in the hospital. But again, it's like, this man owns the vehicle. I understand if you're a cop and you think somebody's stealing a car, you got to be careful, because if they're stealing a car, maybe they do have a gun. Maybe they're willing to shoot somebody. I get it. But the man was literally facing you and running backwards, pleading for you to stop hurting him and don't shoot when you shot him. Because the cop was on top of him on the ground, but he was hurting him, so the guy resisted and got up and was backing away, and the cop shot him. So, again, this happened. The officer is Derek Wiley. The man's name is Lindo Jones, and that was out in Texas. So, again, these things happen all the time. I could have told you about the canine cop in Indiana that killed another dog totally out of the blue. I could have told you about the 3 other stories related to sexual assault and abuse by cops in New Jersey, 2 separate stories. But we don't have time for all of these. But it happens a lot. It happens a lot. And I also got to shout out Carlos Miller at Photography Is Not a Crime. This guy's a great photographer and journalist, and he highlights this, and he's a source a lot of the heads up I get of stories like this. So that's a big shout out for that as a resource. So moving along, we got to talk about voter registration day. We got to talk about Kaepernick, and we got to talk about sandwiches. So
not good
I guess we got to go. I guess we go to Kaepernick.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So what's the deal?
So I'm sure that most people are abreast of exactly what's going on with Colin Kaepernick, but he has been made one of the faces of Nike's latest campaign. It's very sensational. I'm big on words. I love to use that word. But in this, it fits. It's very sensational because Colin Kaepernick, as most of us know, has become a trending name in the news and media, social media, because of his protests against violence and brutality, specifically by police against people of color in America. A lot of people has misconstrued his protest to be some anti-American, anti-military, anti-flag protest. It's been totally taken outside of what his intentions were. So he's like the most hated man by 55-year-old white Republicans who apparently love Nike running shoes. So now, since Colin Kaepernick has been made the face of Nike, there's been this huge wave of people like burning their Nike gear, throwing their shoes in the furnace, tearing their shirts off their bodies in public and stomping on them. People doing very dramatic displays of like anti-Nike. We hate you if you support this guy. We won't spend another dollar here. But Nike said, we don't care because we're making way more money. Since we put Colin Kaepernick's face, other people who support him, who support his cause, have gone out of their way to buy our products, to promote our brand. Jennifer Lewis was wearing Nike on the red carpet. Like, people are taking this thing to the extreme. You're seeing a dichotomous split between what I'm going to call proud Americans and people who are just like, care about me, please. I might be being extra. But, like, I'm proud of Colin Kaepernick. I stand behind him. But, yeah, I know that I don't got to go too much into detail because most of us have heard the story. But I just wanted to share my opinion and say there's nothing wrong with what they're doing. They have a right to make money, first of all, because let's not be confused. This is a business move for them. They did a risk assessment. They calculated. They knew that they were going to make money off of this. At the end of the day, people are talking about Nike. It was already a huge brand. Just when you thought you couldn't talk about them more, we're talking about them every day, all day. We're seeing their logo. When you burn their logo, you have to put it on the screen first so we know what you're burning. You're doing free advertisement, okay? Secondly, from a political standpoint, everybody chill. Colin Kaepernick is not anti-military. If anything, he's respecting his nation enough to challenge what it does and to call it out on its BS and say, I dare you to change. I dare you to treat people better. And because I have this platform, I'm going to use it. And I don't understand why anyone still has to explain that.
I will say my 2 cents is, and because I love being cynical, it gives me life being cynical, right? That Nike, like you said, did this because they did a calculation and they knew that this would be a net gain for them. And so for me, like, you out there wearing Nike logos on a red carpet, that's super extra to me. And I'm not going to go buy Nike because of this, but I respect that they did and they stuck with him and they were paying him since he was kicked out of the NFL on the low, I guess presumably until they were ready to launch like this or decided maybe they don't want to do something with him, whatever. So that's to be respected too, I think, paying him throughout that time when he wasn't visibly a spokesperson for them. No doubt he was using their equipment, but so I'm cynical in that sense. I'm not going to go buy Nike just because of that. And I will also say they're just jumping on the trend, right? In a sense, they were supporting him, yes, but they're cashing in on the relevance that he still has today.
Yes.
And let me flip that into an optimistic way and turn off my cynicism for a minute. That's because of us. That's because you and me, everybody listening, that's because we have been paying him that attention. We know what he's doing. People are supporting him. His voice is not diminished despite his employment, despite politicians, despite very powerful people out there in the country trying to silence his message. It's been going strong. He's getting publicity. He's been effective in the work he does. If you don't know about his 10 for 10 campaign, he got 10 celebrities to match his $10,000 donation.
Oh, my God.
Last summer, or was it earlier this year? I can't remember. And that was amazing. And it was a lot of publicity. And he worked in some cases with them to identify a nonprofit organization doing services or whatever in different communities. And that was amazing. His voice has not diminished. And that's because of us, because people care and we're giving him that support. And so Nike jumping on this wave or even having that calculation, this is going to be a win for them, is a reflection of the wins that were like that's our win.
Right.
We forced Nike to do that, right? Because they could have said Kaepernick like anybody else, or we're not going to touch that. The guy's un-American, but they said no. Like the people, like they're down for this, and we're going to get on there as well. So they're really following our lead, as far as I'm concerned. A lot of conversations said they're taking a stance. No, we've made the stance, and they're like okay. So I love that.
That was a nice way to look at it, Steve. I like that.
Oh, perfect segue. Holy shit. This is perfect. Look how I'm going to do this. Speaking of being active and making your voice heard and actionable in the country, voter registration day is September 25th. And this is crazy important because we got to vote. And I'll tell you like this, even if you think voting doesn't do anything, just go vote anyway. It's going to take like an hour of your time.
Yes, that's
just go
what
vote.
I always say.
Just go vote because look, watch this. Let's say you vote for your candidate and they win and then they screw you anyway. And that's why you didn't want to vote in the first place. See, yada. If you didn't vote, the other guy was going to screw you anyway. So here we are back to square one. But if they win and they do what you want them to do, that's a victory. All it takes, like once every 2 years, you just got to go for an hour, maybe 2 hours because the line is long. You vote, and maybe something good will come out of it. Maybe something bad will come out of it. But if you don't go, somebody you disagree with is going to get that W. And it's going to be bad for you regardless.
Yes.
So, like, we just need to get on there and register if you're not registered. And a matter of fact, honestly, we all probably need to be double checking anyway because the Republican Party officially has a lot of moves in place where they're trying to prevent voter fraud, which there's not much evidence that it happens. But so a lot of times is what happened. I think it happened to John Legend. He went to vote last year.
It did.
And he was not on the registration list. He's like, bro, how? How can that be? I'm very well registered. Right. So like people are coming to because if you go and find out right then that you're not on the registration, that's a big problem. So it might be good sense for us all to either sign up to register, even if we think we already are, or double check that in some way because it's an easy way. We can march on the street, and I have this debate with a lot of my friends and my brother as well, who organize politically around different issues like all year round. We got to keep doing that work. If you're engaged in that, we got to keep doing it. If you're not, we'd love to have you in. But the minimum that we can all do is just vote, because it takes an hour. Whether you're working on saving the world 24/7 all year, just take that time out and go vote real quick, even if you don't think it'll work. But that's how it happens, because the fact of the matter is Nike heard all of our voices. They heard all of our support, because all year we're supporting him. But so we got to vote. And then, like Kaepernick, we got to always be on it. We got to always be vocal that we still support. If you elected your candidate or you didn't, whoever's representing you wherever you live, you got to stay on them. And that can be hard to do. I get it. We're all busy. But an email or a phone call once a month or twice a year, I don't know. Like, we got to maintain that pressure, just like we do supporting Kaepernick to get Nike on board. We got to maintain that pressure to support a given policy or idea in our community, so those politicians get on board with us. Because that's how the change happens. In D.C. right now, coming up this week, I know one of the things they're going to be debating on the council is whether they should lower the penalties for fare evasion on the metro.
Yes.
And I'm like, look, we don't want people jacking the fares. I get it, right? We need that money, but we throwing people in jail now for $2? Like, that just, I get it makes sense. Like, well, we got to enforce the law. Yeah, but we got to be smarter than that. So, like, that's a thing that's up for debate. Do you want people going to jail for that? Is it a logical use of the money and resources for the law enforcement to lock up that person over $3 or whatever it may be? Like, these are conversations are happening all the time. And if you can get engaged more than you are, that's awesome. But at the very least, just go out and vote. Because if you and me agree and you go out and vote and we get that person that's more sympathetic to our side in there, it's easier to hold them accountable towards the direction we want them to go. If we don't vote and the polar opposite of our views gets in, it's harder to make that person come over here to do what we want them to do. Right. So, boom, that's my whole spiel. It's so easy. We just got to register and vote, and that's September 25th. There's events going on all over the place. If you look at the website, nationalvoterregistrationday.org, you can type in your town or city or state or whatever and get a little map of where events are going on to get you registered. So that's my spiel. I've been going hard for like 3 minutes on that.
I need to get in that voter line myself. I can't be a hypocrite and sit on here and promote it and then not show up, because it's something that I'm trying to live by. I want to stand in my adulthood more firmly. So, like, thank you for that. You charged me up.
I appreciate it. Yeah, and I get it. It's not always sexy and exciting. And it can feel, even to me, last time we had to vote in the primary, that day I was kind of like, I really don't feel like going over it. But I was like, that's stupid. All year, things I've been doing, working on, talking about, like, I got to go, obviously. Right. In the moment, I was just like, I don't feel like it. I'll be honest. I didn't feel like it. But I went. It was pouring rain that day, too. I'll be honest.
The moment that it's time for me to do all of the things I say I'm going to do is the moment I lose to get done. I'm like, man, every time.
So let's wrap the show on a sad note, but like it's kind of a lighthearted note because we can joke about this.
Not for me. It's personal.
It is?
Yes.
So if you live around D.C. and I guess to some extent Chicago, Taylor Gourmet Sandwiches is closing.
Oh, I love that place.
It's delicious. It is.
I don't really go for the sandwiches, but I do go for their salads when I act like I'm going to be a healthy person.
Yeah, it's good. So we just found this out like just very shortly before this, and that kind of hit me a little bit hard. I didn't know there were stores in Chicago, but I'm a little sad because I like delicious subs and sandwiches, and that was a good spot, man.
I believe they have 17 locations in Washington, D.C., and all of them will be closing. The store is filing for bankruptcy.
Yeah, tomorrow, Sunday. So
can we go to Taylor Gourmet for lunch? Maybe we can get some free stuff. We should just roll up in there and be like, hey,
can we negotiate?
You're about to throw all this stuff in the trash. Just let me get 2 salads, a couple burgers.
Can we haggle?
Burgers.
Cut me a deal, man. You ain't even gonna have a job tomorrow, bro. This is minimum wage. Come on, man. Shoot me another sandwich.
Free food to people who are hungry.
That's what they should do. Facts. Yo.
They're just gonna trash it. Come on, Taylor Gourmet.
I'm saddened by that. So, but there will be delicious shops opening up to replace it, no doubt, and we'll have many options.
17.
17. There will be 17 new locations available if you have a restaurant idea and you want to open up. So I'll look forward to whatever goodies and treats might pop up in the future. But yeah, that was just a kind of a sad personal note for us because we're gluttons. We love that tasty food.
It's good and it's healthy. I'm gonna cry now.
Well, anyway, guys, thanks for listening.
This has been another great and powerful episode
of What's the Deal. And, of course, do remember, follow us on Instagram at Steve Discourse.
You can follow me at It's J Cali.
ITSJAY.
CALLI.
Okay, tune in next time. Peace.